For the sake of conversation, I'll play devil's advocate here. Do we really think that this label is going to change public perception? I'm going to go buy a bottle of whiskey because I enjoy drinking a glass of whiskey at the end of a long week. Am I supposed to see this label and go, oh, never mind. I'm not going to do that now?
Yeah. So along those lines, I looked into the best comparison I could think of, which is the cigarette warning labels. And what we see with that is mixed. For example, one study looked at U.S. daily smokers who are not ready to quit. Okay. And it did not change their behavior. However, it did increase their awareness. Okay. So if you want to look at hard end results, there was not a change in the study time frame. But I think step one here, and what's still critical, is awareness. Because, for example, in the report itself, they do a rather large survey of adults, 18 and older, about their knowledge of what leads to increased cancer risk. And they asked about multiple different factors. 90% were aware of tobacco and radiation links to cancer. 45% were aware of the link to alcohol. So again,
huge gap.
Yeah. Endpoints are ultimately what we care about, but starting at awareness is critical.
That's fair. My question is, who are the 10% of adults that don't know that tobacco use leads to cancer?
Like, how you start doing those large surveys, I can't imagine what you really learn about people in general, but
nevertheless, okay, I guess that's fair that we want to help people establish that relationship in their head, that they're informed awareness. At the same time, I was in Spain a couple of years ago. It was delightful. In case anybody's wondering, highly recommend Barcelona. It's great. But in any store that was selling tobacco, they had warning labels on every single package. And it wasn't just a black and white clear statement. It included really graphic photos of different cancers that you can get from smoking. And at the same time, I saw far more smokers in Spain than I see in the average American city. So again, I'm just going, I don't know that this is going to make any difference. This just seems like an unnecessary government action that, to what benefit? Yeah,
I'll go into a little more regarding the studies. So there was also a study that looked at the size of the labels. So within a study, they did find that graphic, larger, more comprehensive are more effective in communicating the risks. They also looked at something that is adjacent. So in Canada, they have package warnings about that impotence. So there's multiple different, cardiovascular risk, cancer. They have impotence on there. So they're listing any of the possible issues. In Canada versus US, UK, or Australia, so Canada is the only country that has these, those smokers were 2.68 times more likely to know that it causes impotence. So in terms of impact, at least from an awareness standpoint, that's significant. That's showing that these are at least being seen and then translated to people when they were being asked a question about it.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense.
The other, and the last thing, this was a study in China that found, because on the first study I'd mentioned was only smokers that were already stratified based on not ready to quit, which is a significant factor here.
Right.
This study in China is much more broad-based. Okay. So they could evaluate what impact it had at different levels of what your smoking intake is, your tobacco burden, or your nicotine dependence. So they found that female smokers, along with light tobacco burden, they say, but light smokers and mild nicotine dependence, warnings had more of an impact on them, both in terms of awareness and endpoints. So it does make sense when you start to stratify, what is going on with individuals and what decisions they're trying to make. Some people are hard and fast and you're not going to do anything about them. That was kind of study one.
Right.
But people that are a little more on the fence, you can see that at least in this study anyway, there was an impact.
And then also I guess you could infer that this is planting the seed for people who are just learning about different health decisions or just general life decisions. So if you're an up and coming 13, 14, 15 high schooler, whatever it is, and this is on there, you like to believe that, hey, it's better that it's at least on there now. It can be talked about in the curriculum in schools a little more readily now. If it's this big change that it's taken 40 years to change,
right,
to edit. So that is very interesting. It speaks to how, again, how complicated the behavior change process is as somebody is working through either, consuming less alcohol or whatever it is, smoking and whatever the case. So it's like, does that mean you just not, change the labeling?
Right.
And along those lines, because that's a really good point. I think too, you never know when a label will have the effect, when it will have impact. You could be drinking or smoking for years and years, and whatever the case may be. So a family member gets cancer or something, and then the next time you see that bottle, maybe you're a little further on, you're having some other issues with these things, whatever it is, now that same label that made no impact on you for 10, 12 years now has impact. So I think having it on there in that sense at least opens the door for you to be able to receive the message that's on there.
That makes sense. And actually, that was one of the things that I was about to bring up, was that I wonder to what extent the smoking warning labels and the general awareness of tobacco and cancer may not have radically affected current smokers, but it clearly has impacted young people growing up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know my generation, it was already, I'm not into that. I don't want to do that. I don't like the way that affects people. And then my kids had no interest in most of that stuff because it was just an assumed thing. I'm never going to do that because no. So I think that there probably is something to that.